where I play, as long as I go number one in the draft.
From the Erie Otters, Connor McDavid.
From the London Knights, Mitch Marner.
From the Western Hockey League's Brandon Wheat Kings, Nolan Patrick.
This is Tracking the Draft with Craig Button.
He checks an enormous amount of boxes. Nobody in this draft did more with less. I absolutely love him. It's not his skills that anybody's concerned about. It's that playing attitude. And quite frankly, it's really poor.
Speeding towards the future of the NHL.
From the U.S. Development Program, Jacob Truba.
From Färjestad of the Swedish Elite League, Jonas Brodin.
From the Boston U Terriers, Brady Tkachuk.
He could play in the NHL next year. He's one of those guys.
Here's your host, Dean Millard.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 19 of Tracking the Draft with Craig Button, the Director of Scouting for TSN and former GM in the National Hockey League and Stanley Cup champion, will be joining us in just a few minutes. My name is Dean Millard, and the stars of tomorrow are discovered and discussed here. I'm glad to have you aboard right here on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. UFSN is your one-stop fantasy shop when it comes to fantasy sports. If you have a fantasy show that you think would work on our network, please reach out. UFSN at uffsports.com. All right, these are the players we are going to be discussing today. Dylan Duke, prospect out of the U.S. National Development Program. They're playing in the USHL. $40 this NFT was purchased for by Pipeline Prospects in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, and he is having a fine season. James Malatesta is a forward with the Quebec Ramparts in the QMJHL. Daltac Scouting Service has this NFT at $75, hoping to cash in during the draft. 23 points in 32 games this season, and I'm really excited about this player, Dmitri Zugan, a forward with Moskva in the MHL. And how about Californication? They listed this player for just $20. And this is a guy who is not going to be drafted in the first round, but will be taken at some point, and as this player develops, the value is going to go up. And Californication, I think they're going to make a decent amount on this NFT in the UFHL when Zugan eventually pans out. 16 goals, 40 points in 61 games this year. I'm going to ask Craig, actually, about the caliber of play in the MHL and how it kind of compares to some of the junior leagues in Canada. Craig joins us courtesy of the UFF Sports Hotline. As mentioned in the past, scouting is so important in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. But you're scouting real-world players and then selling them or auctioning them off to fantasy franchises. So you actually go to the same games, watch the same players that Craig Button and all other scouts do. You find a player you like, and boom, you are in the mix. In this format, you own the game, so get in the game. Check it out at uffsports.com for more information. Lots of cool things coming in the next little while with Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, and lots of cool analysis, including how many guys does Craig think realistically have a shot at going first overall. We'll get to that and more next.
Here he is, the Director of Scouting for TSN, former GM of the Calgary Flames, and a Stanley Cup champion with the Dallas Stars. Plus, he's a sharp-dressed man with a heart of gold and a passion to match it. Craig Button.
All right, Craig, time to talk about another trio of players for the 2021 draft. But as we go through this draft and we're talking about all these different players that we have on different lists, there's only one player that can go first overall. And sometimes it's not a question at all. We know who it's going to be. Other times, there's a few names out there. How many names do you think realistically there are to go first overall this year?
2. And that doesn't mean that we can't talk about this guy or that guy, but for me, it's very clear for me. It's Owen Power, the very strong two-way cerebral defenseman from the University of Michigan, or Dylan Guenther, the sublimely skilled winger from the Edmonton Oil Kings. Those are the two guys. I mean, we've seen in previous years when it was Nolan versus Nico that, Heiskanen went 3 and Makar went 4 and Pettersson went 5, and they all were better than the first two guys selected. And that's not to be critical of Nico Hischier or Nolan Patrick, but that's what ends up happening. But going into that draft, I don't think anybody, was looking at potentially other players. Or said, hey, like these guys belong and could certainly unseat them. You have your different beliefs and everything that goes with it. But at this point in time, Power and Guenther.
I like it. And, Edmonton hockey fans will be excited to be able to see the potential. If they can tune in on the CHL live package and watch a potential first overall pick. That would be only
for 5 more days.
That's
Dylan
right.
Guenther is going to represent Canada at the U18 tournament on April 12th when the players have to go and report. So this coming weekend is the last time you're going to be able to watch Dylan Guenther live with the Edmonton Oil Kings. After that, you're going to have to wait until April 27th when he debuts for Canada at the Under-18 tournament in Dallas, Texas.
And that will be so exciting. And, the impact, when you look at this player and that tournament, what sort of impact do you see him having?
Well, the same impact I see him having every time he plays the game. Significant. Dylan's the bottom line is Dylan is, you watch the game and you watch players that are so skilled like Dylan Guenther. And, one of the things I look for in terms of elite ability is what area of the ice, can they not impact? What situation in the game can they not contribute in? And, I keep coming back to not being able to answer there's this place or there's that situation. I mean, he can score, he can make plays, he plays on the penalty kill, he plays on the power play, he can play in tight quarters, he can grind it out, he can open it up with his speed. So, I watch a player that's comfortable everywhere on the ice and in every situation and capable of making an impact. And that's how I see Dylan Guenther. And when I watch him and watch how great his hockey sense is, and combined with that high end skill, I see a surefire NHL star.
And then Owen Power, who you said the other guy in contention for that number 1 spot in your eyes, seems to be that total pillar that you could build a defenseman and a blue line and a whole team around, doesn't he?
Have you ever seen a traffic cop at a busy intersection?
Yes.
Manage it from every other area, right? And total control, blowing the whistle, directing hands, using his left and his right. That's Owen Power on the ice. 100% in control, 100% in command. It doesn't matter how fast the cars are moving or how congested the traffic is. Owen Power is able to get it all sorted out. He's able to get the cars moving in the right direction. He's able to stop cars when they need to be stopped. He needs to get people through the mazes of traffic and the vehicles. And on the ice, it can get really busy, get really congested. But the order that Owen Power has in his game to keep the game moving and keep the game in his team's favor is pretty significant. And that's the defenseman that just screams, pillar type defenseman.
That's beautiful. All right, let's get to the first player we are talking to today of the three that we'll be discussing. Dylan Duke is a forward with the U.S. National Development Team in the USHL. This NFT was purchased by Pipeline Prospects for $40. So looks like a good payday is going to come for this player. 25 goals, 44 points in 43 games this year. Those are really impressive offensive numbers. And Craig, I've heard the term jack of all trades with this player in that, I guess that he can do a lot of really good things in a lot of areas. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I'm not so sure he's a jack of all trades. I'm not saying he isn't. He's a really good goal scorer. He's really smart. He arrives at the right times. He gets in and around the net. He's got real terrific hands. You got to be able to take the puck, and you got to be able to handle it in tight areas, and you got to be able to get it off your stick and shoot it and challenge the goaltender. With that puck. What that puck skill ability, and I think Dylan has that, and he's also got that. He's got that ability to get underneath opponents and defenders and free up his hands and free up his stick and get those opportunities and score. And that's if you can't play in tight areas and you can't, withstand the challenges that are going to come your way physically and people trying to deny you, because once you get into that area of the rink where teams are defending hard, you have to be just as fierce in your approach to finding ways to score, and then you got to combine it with the skill. And I think Dylan does that very, very nicely.
Is he a guy that, finds a spot on the ice and scores from there? Or is he a guy that, says, hey, I've got the puck. I got to get to the net. Get out of the way. I'm busy. I'm taking the puck to the net to try to score. Is there a typical goal in his repertoire?
When you describe what you're describing Alexander Ovechkin, Brett Hall, those types of players. I don't think Dylan's that type of player. I think Dylan, the player that I compare Dylan to is Riley Smith of the Vegas Golden Knights. He skates, he jumps to the attack, he's really good on the rush, but he can handle that puck in tight areas in and around the net. And, because he's so smart, and Dylan's not a huge guy, but he doesn't need to go take on the big, strong guys. He uses his brains, he uses his quickness, his agility, read the play. That's where I need to be. I'm going to get there before you can defend me, but I'm not going to get myself involved in unnecessary tangles. And I think that's how Riley Smith plays, and I think Dylan has a lot of similarities to Riley Smith.
And, the numbers are eye-popping. So, you talk about the IQ, knowing the place to be on the ice, where the puck is going to be, where it's going to do that. That's how you get a lot of goals. Like, really skilled players, they aren't just skilled with, I need to get the puck on my stick and shoot and put it in the net. I think the really skilled players are like, okay, I know where the next scoring opportunity is going to come from, and I'm not afraid to get into that area to get myself into that position.
Well, I know we use things like afraid or not afraid, right? I prefer the words he's determined. He's not going to be denied. He's hungry. He's going to fight through the resistance, because that's where the rewards come. Dean, I can tell you this. If the rewards were easy, everybody would do it. And I'm not just talking about hockey. I'm talking right through life. When it's hard and challenging and demanding, that's what makes the rewards taste a little bit sweeter and become a little bit more special. It's the same thing with hockey players. The ones that do it, it's not that they're just committed. They're committed to doing the things that will give themselves success and their team success. And that's the way I look at Dylan.
Excellent stuff. Let's now move along to James Malatesta, a forward with Quebec in the QMJHL, and this NFT was purchased by Daltac Scouting Service for $75. And what a debut by him in the QMJHL in his first ever game. He scored twice, and you can't ask for a better situation like that in a very tough league to score 2 goals. So that's a great debut. What has his progression been since his rookie season until now in the Q?
Well, I think for a lot of players, and I think James falls into this category, the stop and start of the league, and, as you're growing and you're maturing and you're ready to meet some of the next challenges, you haven't been able to intersect with those challenges because of the situation with the pandemic and because of leagues starting up and slowing down. We hear the word rhythm used a lot. How players get into a rhythm and how players get settled into, just pushing along in their game. And I think James is like the vast majority of players. They haven't had a great opportunity to do it. And the younger you are in junior hockey, and James is 17, you don't have a real large body of work to draw back on. I think for a 19-year-old player, you played junior hockey for a number of years, so you got a little bit better ability and an opportunity to draw back on experiences. But James is trying to grow like a lot of these draft eligible players. So they're trying to move from a 16-year-old standard now to a 17-year-old standard. You don't really want to be reliant on your 16-year-old stuff because the challenges are becoming greater and you're growing. So I believe that James, like a lot of players, have gone through very similar development paths, and that's been kind of moving along a little bit downhill, a little bit uphill, and all in all. But because I've seen James play for so many years, and like I'm no different than anybody else. You've only had so many opportunities to watch him this year. But what I have seen, having watched him for so long, is a really smart goal scorer. I think that he is that goal scorer that frees his hands. You have to be able to get open at the right times to receive a pass, to uncheck yourself. And James is great at deception. He'll drive and get a defenseman to go to a spot. That's not the spot that he wants to go to necessarily. That's a spot that he wants a defenseman or defender to go to so that he can get to the spot where he can take full advantage. I think he's got a really good touch in and around the net. He can handle tough pucks. He can corral the pucks that don't come cleanly on his stick, and he can make those good, accurate shots. And I really believe that in a few years' time, we're going to be hearing about James Malatesta. Geez, how did they get him at such a point in the draft? I think he's an NHL player. I think he's going to score goals at the NHL level. I look back and you watch Brendan Gallagher play now, and he's not like Brendan Gallagher with respect to the way Brendan plays right now. I'm not so sure Brendan was always that way either. But Brendan was a really good skater who got in and around the net, and once he physically matured, his game went to other levels. But James has that type of hunger, and he has that type of drive and that type of touch around the net. Brendan Gallagher's a 5th-round draft pick, if I recall correctly. And, how do you get him there? Well, you get him there because, you're paying attention. I shouldn't say that's not the right way to put it, Dean. What you're not doing is you're not looking at what translates and understanding, hey, these are the qualities that can really give him success at the next levels. He's not quite there yet. He's not physically mature there yet. But once he does, there's every reason to believe that he does it really exceptionally well. And again, played for Quebec at the Canada Games, was on a top team with the Lac St. Louis Lions, went and played at the U17 and was a good player. Last year in Quebec was a good player. And so if I'm just going to rate players based on, he has 10 goals and 13 assists in 32 games this year, I'm not seeing the forest for the trees. And I can tell you right now, I like what's in this forest. And I like what his scoring tree can offer NHL teams down the road. I think he's got an opportunity to be a really good player.
Well, from what I read about that U17 tournament, he started, I think, on the second line in his play. He elevated it so well that he got moved up a little bit. Do you put in? I know we talk about not putting a lot of stock in just a single tournament, but it does show some terrific potential for him that he had such a strong tournament in that setting.
Well, even if you go back to the Canada Games, Quebec beat Ontario in the gold medal game, and James Malatesta was a big part of that. And you go back in time and you watch, and keep in mind that's best on best. Canada Games is best on best. U17 is best on best. And so when you get these players playing in best on best tournaments, again, yeah, they're data points. Yeah, it's not the sole area to evaluate them on, but you're watching them over a period of time handle the different challenges. And when you're playing against better players and you still continue to have success, that's a signal. That's not noise. That's a signal.
Where do you see him best, as a winger or a center?
Oh, I think he's a winger. I like him better on the wing. I think his ability to be closer to the offensive net, for him to find those openings in the offensive zone, with a good playmaking center or a good playmaking winger, will play to his skill set very nicely.
And do you see this guy, as you're evaluating your list, is he a guy that's, knocking on the top 40 door for you?
I don't know yet. I don't know if it's top 40, top 50. I'm not quite sure yet. I mean, that's a process I'm still right in the middle of, Dean. And again, like, there's still some players I've seen more of. I mean, I have an opportunity to, watch the games. I have an opportunity at the U18. James is not going to be playing at the U18 because the Quebec League players are not going there. Because they've had a full season and they want to finish their championship schedule, which is, I think, totally fair. And, so he's not, but he's played enough games and I've watched enough of them to feel confident for me that he's gonna definitely be in my top 64 players, definitely.
Excellent stuff. Well, Craig joins us courtesy of the UFF Sports Hotline. Scouting, so important. It's actually the lifeblood of franchises in the UFHL. Any free agent goes through a scout. Any prospect goes through a scout. So get in the game where you own the game. At uffsports.com, you can become an independent scout or form a partnership with an existing franchise. Reach out for more information at UFH League on Twitter, and as mentioned, get in the game. And Craig, the NHL Trade Deadline is right around the corner this Monday, and something that NHL teams have done. And as an affiliate of Duckman's Domination and high-level scouting, we have also done that in regards to our franchise. We're heading into the trade deadline, and I think one of the most important things, and you and I have chatted about this in the past, is knowing what you have, like a poker hand, know what you have in your hand before you make a lot of bets, and knowing the value of your assets going into that trade deadline. And in this case, we're talking about our prospects. It's kind of the key step before you make any trade, isn't it?
Story time with Craig coming up. I'm going to tell you the story of Gary Roberts.
All right.
With Calgary Flames. Gary Roberts was a first round pick, a very promising first round pick, a player that had a lot of success. And the Flames were in a situation where, Gary, and Gary will be the first one to tell you that, coming out of junior hockey, understanding the physical requirements to be a good NHL player, conditioning, strength, and everything that goes with it, he wasn't up to speed. And, now Gary is, is as good as there is in terms of fitness and preparing players for the rigors of so many different levels, not just the NHL, hired by the Seattle Kraken to be their high performance director in that regard. So he's drafted high. He's going through the process of learning. At that time, a common phrase was, he's got to learn how to be a pro. He's got to learn how to be an NHL player. Okay, so I just told you what it meant. So now the Calgary Flames, he's a young player, and now they're seeing, okay, there's some people in the organization, maybe Gary Roberts isn't going to be that good. Now they're fielding some inquiries on Gary Roberts. Cliff Fletcher's the GM, and Al McNeil's his assistant, and this is a pretty good team in Calgary, and they're fielding some inquiries, and Cliff is down the path of listening seriously to teams, and so he's laying out the trade options, and he's with his group, and Al McNeil says to Cliff, and now they both came from the Montreal Canadiens organization, so Sam Pollock, the great GM, So Al says to Cliff, he goes, "We really haven't tested out Gary." He says, "So like we're looking at these trade options, and do we really know what we have?" Well, there was some pushback around the room from different people. Well, Gary's this, and and Al said, "Sammy always told us, Cliff, don't be trading somebody until you know what you have. Don't be trading somebody until you know what we have. We haven't tested them. We don't know what we have." Cliff stopped everything right there, phoned back to all the teams and said, "You're right. They didn't trade Gary Roberts." So that's story time that illustrates 100% what you're talking about.
And that's what you need to, as much as a trade that you think can help you right now. And, if you win it all, I guess obviously it did, but only one team gets to say that all the deadline moves worked perfectly for them. And then all the rest of the teams, unfortunately, look at, oh man, we traded, you get into buyer's remorse and things like that. But hey, you gotta live by the decisions you make. And, prospects for some GMs are worth a lot more in currency than others. And I guess it's all in value. But that's why it's so important to have that list, and that whether it's your prospects or your minor league players or whatever it is, to know the value of them. It is so important. And I think a lot of people make that mistake.
What do you mean a lot? Like they do, because they don't know the player. They haven't tested the player. And they're ready to give up on the player without putting him into the proper situations of testing him and understanding what he is and knowing what he is. So, yeah, you're right. I'll tell you how you make your best deals. By having as much complete information in terms of your assessment. And you're not going to have that, you're starting to trade a 21-year-old player that people might be down on, and you haven't tested him, you haven't continued to help him move to a direct. Now, if a player, isn't putting in the work or doesn't understand or hasn't had success or whatnot, you go, okay, yeah, well, he's not willing to do it, to put in the work. But to Al McNeil's point, Gary was putting in the work. He just wasn't ready. Al McInnes was a very similar type player with respect. I mean, they weren't talking about trading him, but coming in, he had to work on that great. Oh, he has to learn how to be a pro. Oh, has to learn how to be a pro. Yeah, well, we all have to learn how to meet the challenges of levels as you move up them. And if you want to be impatient and you want to make judgments based on a small snapshot of information, you're going to make mistakes.
Indeed. All right, let's chat about Dmitri Zugan, a forward in the MHL with Moskva. Californication Analytics and Scouting picked up this player. They listed him for just the low price of $20. That's the minimum you can get. And I think there's going to be a little bit of a profit with this player. He's having a fine season in the MHL. What do you think of the MHL? I'm not very familiar with where the caliber, how it may be compared to some of the junior leagues that we have in Canada. What's your thought on the MHL, Craig?
Well, it's the Russian Junior League, and it's a real opportunity for players, the junior age players, to go in and compete at a level that they're capable of handling. Russia has done a real good job. The KHL has done a really good job of developing a minor pro league, which is the VHL, and then the MHL, which is the junior league. It used to be like, okay, you're going to come through our system, and these teams are tied into their system, but there wasn't an opportunity for them to play, and so now you had good younger players that were trying to play on the top team that weren't good enough, and creating a junior league and a minor pro league like the KHL Russia have done has been really significant for the development of their players. And it's great if a player could go in and play in the KHL at 17 or 18 or 19, but it's a rarity. So to have other places where they can go and play and continue their development under the watchful eye of the team of the program that they're in, I think it's just really, really, really important for them to have this type of league, and it's a good league. It's a really good league.
All right, what do you like about Dimitri? What do you like about his particular skill set?
Well, the way I would describe Dmitri is that he's a going concern. He's got a motor. It revs at high RPMs. He's invested in the demanding hard parts of the game. He'll check. He'll forecheck. He'll play defense. He'll kill penalties. He's a real smart player. He understands. Okay, this is my game. I got to get the puck into that goal scorer's hands. I got to take some of the pressure off. I got to let some of my goal scoring wingers be able to take advantage of their ability. So I'm going to support them defensively, let them do their thing. I'm going to make sure I get the puck to them. He's a good skater. He's kind of a stocky, low center of gravity. So, when he gets involved in the one-on-one battles, what I call hand-to-hand combat, he's a real difficult player to handle because he's strong and he's determined. And so now when he gets into those areas, he's not wading into the pool. He dives in. He gets the whole body wet when he's getting involved in these areas of the game. And I see him as a 2/3 type centerman that's going to give you just really good, strong, purposeful play. I watch a Barclay Goodrow play. Now, Barclay was a free agent signing by San Jose who ended up on the Tampa Bay Lightning Stanley Cup squad last year, got traded for a first-round draft pick. So that tells you, where he went. Anthony Cirelli, the way Anthony Cirelli plays, a third-round draft pick. Mm-hmm. That's the style of game that I see Dmitri Zugan being able to play. And, you look at those competitors, you look at how they play in different areas of the game, you look at how important they are to their team's success. That's Dmitri to me.
I hear this, and what I think of is that you're not going to hear this guy's name on the first day of the NHL draft, and that gives Californication an opportunity to sell this NFT on the open market, because this is a player who's going to develop and develop and develop. And while you won't hear him on the first day of the draft, he sounds like a guy that you want if you're in a playoff series, kind of a tenacious guy that can, go up against other top guys, can help out and chip in, and, probably guys that you've had in the past, maybe compared to this guy, like when you're throwing this guy over the boards in the playoffs, he could have a good impact in the series.
Well, I'm really happy with myself, Dean, because if I described them that way and you picked up on that, then that's exactly what I see. That's exactly. So I'm glad I described them, because that's how you just discussed them is exactly how I want to portray the player.
Do you remember a guy like that on some of the teams that you were involved in?
We had players. But our center ice was Modano and Newendike. We had Guy Carbonneau up the middle of the ice. So our real successful team, we had Dave Gagne, playing in the middle of the ice for us. We had some really good, strong centermen. I do know this. I look at, I mentioned Goodrow. I mentioned Anthony Cirelli. Chris Draper was hard to play against. He was hard to play against. And, you think about, they had Yzerman and Fedorov, and then, now you get to go play against Chris Draper. And, it was amazing how teams are built. And you look at those Detroit Red Wings teams. So they come at you with Yzerman, then they throw a little Fedorov at you, and then they give you a little Larry on-off who plays, and then you got to deal with Draper. So there was never a moment's rest playing against the Detroit Red Wings center ice, and I think our teams in Dallas were similar with respect to our ability to be able to play in a manner that not only unsettled opponents, but gave them different things to think about. And I think that when you look at, when I mentioned Barclay Goodrow, and I can mention Yanni Gourde and Anthony Cirelli. Mm-hmm. They play the game in a manner that, Kucherov challenges you in a way, and Stamkos challenges you in a way, which is different than the Palat. And you can never get into a rhythm. You can never get into this comfort zone. Okay, if we play like this, we can take advantage, because the way that Draper's going to attack you is different than Yzerman, which is different than Fedorov. Right. And that gives your team such an important mix of players to be able to not only challenge opponents, but to give your team a lot of different looks and to give your team a lot of different opportunities to play in a manner that can be really unsettling to opponents, no matter who you match them up against.
Yeah, and that's where this guy could fit in on a team, especially in the playoff series. I kind of look at the Winnipeg Jets a little bit like that right now with Scheifele, Dubois, and then Adam Lowry being that really third hard guy to play against, and kind of assist the setup that they have there is a little bit similar to that.
Well, even if you think like you go, okay, so if you just think, I think the Winnipeg Jets top 9 is a perfect 10. To be honest with you, you got Scheifele's a superstar, and then you have Dubois, but they can move Dubois around. Then you have Paul Stastny, who's different than Kyle Connor. Then you have Blake Wheeler, who plays against you differently than Nikolai Ehlers, who plays differently than Mason Appleton. Then you have Andrew Kopp coming at you, and Adam Lowry following. Like, I mean, try to get a beat on that team, and you know what? Trevor Lewis is a good player on the fourth line, and Nate Thompson gives you good minutes. And then you got Matthew Perreault, who has shown a real ability to contribute in so many different areas of the game at different spots. That's the type of team that when you're going to play against them, they give you headaches. Not only when you're playing against them, but in trying to deal with how they're going to do. And then you got Paul Maurice. Okay, I'm going to switch Dubois up here, and I'm going to play Scheifele with Ehlers and Con. Like, I mean, it's a coach's dream. It's a coach's dream.
No doubt. It's impressive. Okay, we chatted about how we've got prepared as Duckman's domination for the trade deadline in the UFHL, which is the same trade deadline as the NHL. We mirror everything about that league. But, you're going to be part of the trade deadline coverage this year remotely. What are you expecting? Do you think the quarantine and COVID is going to have a big impact and reduce the amount of trades we might see?
I don't. I think every year you're dealing with something different, but every year you're also dealing with 8 or 9 teams that believe they have a legitimate chance. The other thing about this year is every team in the 4 divisions, they've only played against those teams in that division. So they're zeroed in completely on knowing, okay, here's the strengths of our team. Here's some of the things that have given us some problems. So I think you can zero in a lot stronger, a lot more deeper on what you can do to be one of the last 4 teams standing. Because ultimately that's what you're trying to do now, be one of the last 4 teams standing. So, and you look at the North Division. I think it's clear who the 4 playoff teams are. So when you're looking now at the 4 teams, you're going, okay, we've played them. Everybody's played each other differently and tough in different ways and had their successes and sometimes not as much success depending on the game or the week. But you can zero right in and say, okay, those 4 teams, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Toronto, and Montreal, are in the playoffs. You're not looking to get a player that's going to try to give you a boost to get into the playoffs. You're looking to players now that can give you a greater strength once you're down the stretch, once you're into the playoffs, to get out of your division. So I think with that clarity, and not only within the standings, but also with who you're playing against and what your own team's strengths are, gives you real opportunity. And everybody's looking for opportunity to win the Stanley Cup. And I think there's a lot of teams out there that can look at it. So and conversely, there's lots of teams that are clearly showing they're out of it. So we talk about flat salary cap. There's lots of different ways to navigate around this, but I think there's going to be some real significant movement. And I'm not talking about big name players. I'm talking about number of trades. I'm expecting to see quite a bit of it because of what I just outlined.
Well, we'll be able to recap it next week and check in if any draft picks and prospects have changed hands, as they always seem to do. Great stuff today, Craig. Enjoy the deadline coverage. We'll all be watching.
Thank you, Dean.
This is a serious message.
Craig Button joins us on the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Hotline. Become a scout and make money while providing prospects to the Ultimate Franchise Hockey League.
What you talking about, mister?
Pay that man his money.
I'm your huckleberry. Check out the details at www.uffsports.com.
It's serious.
I like it a lot. I said we got a winner.
UFFS. You own the game.
Always fun chatting with Mr. Craig Button about prospects and more, and I'll definitely be watching him as he does Trade Deadline remotely, like he does this show right now. And of course, we do Craig's Counsel. We just did it a little while ago. He gave a little bit of a story time there with Gary Roberts, and we get into lots of stories and some scouting tips in some future episodes. So if you do have a question you want emailed in, or just in general, if you have a question about a prospect, trackingthedraft@gmail.com, and we will add it to the list of topics that we get. Thank you so much for watching or listening, wherever you do find it. Please subscribe and let us know what you think of the show. Leave us a review. If you're on YouTube, on UFSN, just click subscribe, hit the bell, and you'll get notified when any of our shows actually come out. We have lots of very cool programming going on here on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. We got some great shows up there as well, and you can also find some of my other work at Podcast Alley. There's the Tracking the Draft site. You can find all past episodes, including the ones that we did last season where it was just audio. You can also check out a few of the other shows I have as well. This show, Tracking the Draft, also have Fantasy Hockey Time, UFHL Now, and the Cannabis 101 podcast, where it's an educational show about the wonderful plant that it is. So there you go. Subscribe, leave us a review. Please do so. Let us know what you think of the show, and check out any past episodes you want, or other shows at Podcast Alley. So that's going to wrap things up for this episode. Big thanks to Craig Button for joining us, as always, with his time, his passion, and his knowledge. And, we certainly love the affiliation we have with Craig and my wife Trish and High Level Scouting. Certainly gives us, we think, a leg up in the competition, and there is plenty of competition in the UFHL now. That's on Friday, though, the UFHL. Now, if you'd like to advertise on this show or have a question, please hit me up, trackingthedraft@gmail.com. This show is where the stars of tomorrow are discovered and discussed right here on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. We'll chat again next week. Enjoy the trade deadline. This has been Tracking the Draft with Craig Button. For Craig, I'm Dean Millard. Have a great week.